Here I'm with Miss Michelle Martinez, who is going to tell me a story of how her family has connected to Kansas and how her family was working on the railroads. So, Miss Martinez, why don't you give us the story of how all this occurred?
Well, I think back to stories that my family has told through the years, and I think of my father and my great grandfather, specifically the one that I remember the most, and then my family goes back in Kansas history to the late 1800s and the early 1900s. My family members immigrated from Mexico during those periods of time. Late 1800s, they would come to Kansas and work, and then they would go back, and then they would come back again. And then eventually, in the early 1900s, my family decided to stay in Kansas. And we first settled in like the Chanute area, so I have family history there in Chanute, and my family was one of the first Mexican American families to live in that area. And then my family moved to western Kansas, and basically both my mom and my dad's side of the family settled in western Kansas, and both sides of the family were some of the first families to settle in that area. And while it wasn't, always easy for them in terms of discrimination and that kind of thing, for the most part, my family really had really nice people that they worked with, and they were accepted for the most part in the community. But they did have some experiences that weren't good. But it's a really fun thing to think about, my family being one of the first Mexican families to settle in this area and make an impact on Kansas. Because as far as I know, both sides of my family, my grandfathers, great grandfathers, and uncles were all railroaders. So they built the railroads that traveled through the Southwest, everywhere from Kansas through New Mexico and Texas and even into Arizona. But ultimately, I'm really proud of that Kansas history because Kansas played an important part in helping my family become who we are today and being a part of the Kansas history.